Hey everyone, we have Jason Cohen here, who is a PM on the field service team, focusing on work order management area. And today he wants to talk about a new feature that's going to be released in August and October of 2020 that's called work order metrics, where there are new fields and new functionality added to the work order that makes it easier for dispatchers and managers to track the different statuses and the timestamps that are occurring as part of a work order. So Jason, can you please tell us a little bit more about the feature?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I think what we're addressing is some key gaps we've had for a while here where, we didn't really, there was a couple of pieces of information that we didn't really bring down to the work order level to make that tell the whole story. So what I'll highlight here is this is a work order that I'm going to create. Haven't saved it yet. We've applied one incident type. And if we look over here, we have three new fields. So we have this field called total estimated duration. What this field will do is, amazingly, all this time, we haven't had a field that holds the duration, the full duration at the work order level of the work order. So in this case, we'll see that this gets populated by the incident type, and then I'll apply some other things. This will continue to get updated based on all of the things that impact duration that we apply to the work order. We'll see this field first arrived on getting updated when the first booking is marked as arrived, and then we'll have this other new field completed on, which will have the last completed or end, the last booking that ends will update this field. So what I think this also points out is, we've always had this field created on, modified on, and closed on, these three fields, which tell a part of a story, but I think we're telling the rest of the story here with these three new fields. So this now tells a bit more of a story, and in some organizations, I think, will choose to move these to other places. But for now, I think this makes sense as a place to sort of tell the narrative of the work order, this particular work order's life cycle. So with that said, let's save this record. So I've applied one incident type, which we'll see updates the total estimated duration, which is an asynchronous update for performance reasons. So we see it's updated to 30 minutes because of the incident type that I applied. So now if I add a second incident, let's go ahead and add pump error, which is a 1 hour duration. So now I have a 30-minute duration work order incident and a 1 hour duration work order incident, which obviously we'll see here. Ref updates this to 1.5 hours. The other thing that updates this duration. So if I add, so these are all tasks that came from my applied incidents, which is great. That's correct. But I can also add tasks manually or automatically, however, that aren't associated to an incident. So let's go ahead and say inspect off-gas regulator is another thing that we need to do. It's a 15-minute task. Let's save and close that. We can see here, before I save it, we can see here that it's related to the work order, but not related to the incident. So if I go back over here to my record log and refresh, because it's an asynchronous update, this is 1.75 hours. So that is both of the incidents and the service tasks that are unassociated to an incident. This is a full duration calculation for the work order. So this is, I think, a key new calculated field. So then we look at first arrived on. So if I go ahead and we'll go ahead and book this one. So here's my 1 hour, 45-minute duration work order. I will book it to David. And let's go ahead and mark David as arrived. So he's in progress. So now we know that David's arrived. If we actually look at the booking, I'll just to sort of show how this is working. We look at the booking and we'll see actual arrival time has a value of 4:42 p.m. And if I go look back at my work order, refresh this, we see that my first arrived on value is 4:42 p.m. because that's when my first booking arrived. If I had another booking that happened to arrive earlier, but the guy thinks later, or however, whatever the order of those things come in, this field would always refresh to reference the earliest arrival, the first arrival for this booking, for this work order. So completed, similarly, if I jump back to my, this, to my booking here, and I change the status to completed. So what we'll see is that this will get updated to this incredibly tiny sliver. Apologies for that, because I did it so quickly. If we were to look at the end time of this record, so end time is 4:43 p.m., and it is in a completed state, or it's in a booking status that is related to a field service status that is complete. So if I come back here and refresh, we'll see the end time is updated to 4:43 p.m. Super efficient guy, 1 minute long work order here, but it's updated automatically. And so these fields are, I think, helping to complete this story, right? We see when it was created, we see when somebody first arrived, we see when somebody has completed the work. And now if I go ahead and close post this, which this function's always been there, but we'll also see that this record log now shows the close posted time, which tells a complete narrative of the life cycle of this particular work order. I think the other key things to point out, I can manually, if I don't use bookings, I can manually update these fields so that, if for whatever reason, let's say in a subcontractor scenario, they don't log in, they don't use the mobile app, they're not using bookings, you just give them a list. They tell you the state of things. This would be a great, this still works. They can still say, we got there at, yesterday at 3 p.m. We completed yesterday at 5 p.m. This still allows them to complete this full narrative of the work order. But so, I think these are fairly simplistic. We're adding 3 new calculated fields, duration, first arrival, and completed. That's the key new sort of work order metrics capability here.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Really good stuff. So I just had 2 questions for you. First of all, the first one is, how is first arrived on and completed on? How are those changed? Let's say if I had 2 bookings, let's say I had 2 people that this work order was scheduled to, and I had 2 bookings, and then maybe they were arriving at different times, and then they were completing those bookings at different times.
Yeah, it's a good question. We want to make sure that this is all respecting our offline scenarios and our multi-booking scenarios. So because of how our mobile solution works, if I have 2 guys, they're working totally offline. So resource number 1 says he arrives at 3 p.m. And he syncs right away. Then we're going to get that first arrival is 3 p.m. But let's say resource number 2 actually arrived at 2:30, but he doesn't sync for a couple hours. Well, for a moment, before that second guy syncs, it'll show first arrival at 3 p.m. because that's, as far as the system knows, that first arrival. But as soon as that next guy syncs, we're going to say, oh, actually, resource number 2 arrived a little earlier than our current first arrival value. Between our bookings, it's the earliest first arrival, so it'll update that value to reference the 2:30 p.m. Arrival of resource number 2, despite the fact that it might have initially populated correctly from the system perspective with that first resource's time. So yeah, we're making sure that we're going to respect the correct value from all of the bookings that are on this, that are in a state that should impact this. Of course, bookings that are canceled rather, wouldn't update completed or first arrival. yeah, I think that's, a key value here, a key difference here. Same is true for completed on. So if I had one guy who says he completes at 5 p.m. And that's the last completed time that the system has, it would update that value. But then if another guy comes in later, he got assigned, but for whatever reason he hadn't synced until after that, he says he completes at 6 p.m. Then we know that the actual completed time for this would update to 6 p.m. So we're always going to reference the last completed time and the first arrival time here in these two fields if you have multi-bookings.
Okay. So is it safe to say that first arrived on, it's not looking at the work order system status, it's not looking at the booking status. First arrived on is looking at the actual arrival time field on the booking.
That's right.
And let's say I got to a job site and I actually forgot to say that I arrived on site. So I actually go in and I manually update my actual arrival time. Do you think that would trigger the update of this first arrived on field? Or is
Absolutely.
it really based on that status change to in progress?
Yeah, if you realize later that the booking, that you forgot to say when you actually arrived, and an hour later, or a day later or whatever, you update that booking to say, this is when I actually arrived, we would absolutely update this value here for first arrival, so that we're telling the correct story that your bookings are telling, that as the source of truth for this value.
Okay, and completed on is looking at the end time field of the booking.
That's right, end time, and in this case, status as well. So because we have the actual arrival, we know that the first arrival we can look directly at that field. But with completed, we don't have a actual completed and an estimated completed. End is always populated. So we wait until it's set to end, and the booking status is a booking status that is related to the field service status of completed. So when we know that the booking is in a completed state, we'll grab the end time value and put it here.
Thanks a lot for your time, Jason.
Sweet. Thanks, Dave.